HOA Karen. Covered my pool for a dance floor, so I turned on the wave machine. Part 1. When I got that text from my neighbor Ted, just 4 words. Bro, come home now. I knew something was seriously wrong. Ted wasn't the dramatic type. He's the kind of guy who would calmly mow his lawn even if a tornado was twirling 3 blocks over. But that message? It hit me like a gut punch. I grabbed my keys, bolted to my truck, and tore through traffic like my house was on fire. When I screeched into my driveway, I froze, and my jaw just about hit the ground. My backyard that was swarming. Workers everywhere, ladders, cords, flower arrangements, and smack in the middle of it all, a gigantic platform covering my entire pool. Not by the pool, on it. I stood there, stunned, watching as pink and white banners were being strung across the makeshift stage, the same pool I had spent 3 years saving for and 6 brutal months custom building. A pool that wasn't just a pool, it had a programmable wave system installed beneath the tiles. A masterpiece. And now, it was buried under cheap plywood and party decorations like a forgotten relic. Then, she appeared. A blonde woman with oversized sunglasses, an iced coffee in one hand, and a megaphone in the other, barking orders like she was directing a movie shoot. When she finally noticed me standing there, frozen, dumbfounded, she didn't even blink. Instead, she marched right over, chin high, like she owned the place. And in a voice dripping with fake cheer, she said, "Oh, good, you're home. We're almost done setting up for Caitlin's Sweet 16. Try not to step on the flower arch. It's very delicate." I blinked. Hard. Maybe I was hallucinating. Maybe this was some kind of weird HOA nightmare. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice lower than usual. She gave me that look. "You know the one." Pure contempt. "Karen, vice president of the HOA. And Caitlin's mom," she said like it was supposed to mean something to me. I just stared at her. Karen, HO board vice president, momzilla extraordinaire, had taken over my backyard. I opened my mouth, but she steamrolled right past me. "You didn't get the memo?" she said, sipping her coffee like she hadn't just committed grand backyard larceny. "Memo," I repeated slowly. "Karen, this is my house. That is my pool you're standing on." She actually rolled her eyes at me. "It's a dance floor," she corrected like that somehow made it better. "And don't be so dramatic. The HOA had a vote. We needed space for the party. And you weren't using your pool anyway." She waved her hand airily at my pride and joy, like it was a sandbox. Honestly, I thought I might pass out from sheer rage. "And honestly," she continued, flipping through a clipboard, "I assumed you'd be honored. You'll even get a community recognition certificate. Better than rent money, right?" At that point, I almost laughed. But instead, I pulled out my phone, and I started recording. The moment Karen saw that little red light blinking, her smile twitched. "Oh, don't be like that," she said, voice suddenly syrupy sweet. "Let's not make this into drama." "Drama? Oh, Karen." "You want drama?" I said quietly, still filming. "Fine. I'll give you drama." That night, I wasn't just angry. I was strategizing. You see, Karen claimed that per some dusty old clause in the HOA charter from the 1980s, my pool was communal entertainment space, meaning, according to her, the HOA could technically use it. So I called in a favor. My cousin, a lawyer, read the whole charter cover to cover. And when he called me back, he was laughing so hard he could barely speak. "They've got nothing," he wheezed. "Zero legal ground. You could sue them into the Stone Age if you wanted." Tempting. But I had a better idea. Something much sweeter. I remembered that programmable wave system hidden beneath my pool tiles. the one designed for surf training, with settings ranging from gentle ripples to full-on tsunami. And that's when inspiration struck. I opened the control app on my phone and stared at the glowing red button labeled Activate Tidal Shift. I didn't press it. Not yet. Tomorrow night was Caitlin's Sweet 16, the night Karen had been bragging about for months, the night she wanted everything to be perfect, Instagrammable, unforgettable. And it would be unforgettable. Just not the way she planned. The next morning, I played it cool. Karen showed up around noon in a glittery sun hat big enough to land planes on, flashing me a fake smile. "Hey, neighbor," she chirped, holding out a trash bin. "Mind if our vendors use this?" "Of course," I said, handing her the one I had recently dumped out, full of rotting fish oil from a failed compost experiment. She didn't even notice. By 7 p.m., the DJ had set up, guests were arriving, and my backyard looked like a wedding crossed with a circus. Teenagers in sequined outfits posed for selfies under string lights. Parents milled around awkwardly, pretending not to be miserable. Karen, now in a sequined dress of her own, floated through the crowd like the Queen of England. I stood at my upstairs window, iced tea in hand, watching it all, and smiling, because soon the real party would begin. Part 2. The first beat dropped, and that's when I tapped my phone. Wave mode 1, gentle vibrations. At first, nobody noticed. The plywood panels over the pool gave a faint, almost playful little shimmy. The teens danced harder, thinking it was just the bass. Karen, standing at the center like some queen of chaos, smiled wide. She had no idea. Across the dance floor, a few parents shifted uncomfortably. Some kids stumbled mid-spin, but Karen, too busy soaking up the spotlight, just clapped and called it great energy. I sipped my tea and waited. The DJ, wearing neon sunglasses indoors, no less, screamed into the mic, "Y'all feel that vibration? This party's LIT." The crowd roared. Karen beamed. The plywood creaked, just a little. Then I tapped again. Wave mode 2, disruptive current. The dance floor thumped. The ground beneath the party guests rippled, subtle but real. You could see it now. People wobbling as they tried to groove. Teens tripping mid-TikTok routine. A girl in heels toppled sideways into her friend, sending their sodas splashing over the fancy rented flower arch. Still. Karen stood tall, clutching the microphone. "Isn't this amazing?" she bellowed, voice shaking with the platform. She really thought she was winning. As the sun dipped low and the string lights shimmered, I knew it was time, the grand finale. The DJ cranked up a sappy pop ballad. Caitlin's solo dance was about to start. The crowd hushed, phones raised, recording. Caitlin, in her pink Cinderella gown, twirled dramatically onto center stage. Right then, I tapped my phone. Wave mode 3, tidal surge. It started slow. The entire dance floor tilted, just a few degrees to the left. Caitlin staggered, recovered, looked confused. The music kept playing, but murmurs began spreading across the crowd. The DJ, chugging something suspicious out of a thermos, tried to pump up the bass to fix it. Instead, he slipped. Took out a speaker with him. Crash, screams, laughter, gasps. Karen grabbed the mic again, panicked now. It's fine, just excitement." But it wasn't fine. Oh no, because I hit disruption loop. The plywood floor began to rise and fall, gently at first, then unpredictably, like a mechanical bull gone rogue. Parents staggered, teens shrieked, cupcakes skidded across the floor like tiny frosted hockey pucks. Someone's uncle did an accidental split that would haunt him for years. A candle toppled onto a streamer. Small fire, small panic. Karen ran in circles, shrieking orders no one could hear over the chaos. Her megaphone slipped out of her hand, clattering into the pool with a pitiful splash, and then the plywood sagged dangerously in the middle. One unlucky teen near the edge slipped, his leg plunging straight into the pool below. Water surged up through the cracks. More screams, more phones whipped out recording. The dance floor? Now a soggy, sagging death trap. The air filled with the sounds of shrieking, splashing, and fried electronics. Karen, red-faced, soaked with sweat, grabbed the mic and screamed, "Everyone off the floor, get off!" But it was way, way too late. The illusion of control was gone. People trampled each other trying to escape. Parents slipped, teens screamed, balloons popped like gunshots. And then, the moment I didn't know I needed until I saw it, Karen, in all her glittering, raging glory, slipped on the soaked plywood and belly-flopped face first into the pool. Splash. The entire crowd gasped, then erupted into laughter loud enough to rattle windows. Ted, bless his chaotic soul, caught the whole thing on video, in glorious 4K slow motion. As the crowd fled, drenched and furious, as the music died in a sad, crackling fizzle, I strolled down to the backyard. Karen, hair plastered to her face dripping wet, staggered out of the water. She locked eyes with me, pure fire burning behind those mascara-streaked sunglasses. "You did this," she hissed. I raised my phone, smiled slightly, and said, "Oh no, Karen, you did this." I just turned on the waves. She opened her mouth, probably to screech something about lawsuits or community values, but stopped when she saw Ted filming her from the fence again, grinning like he had just won the lottery. Karen let out a strangled screech, kicked off a soggy sandal, and stormed away, dripping glitter and rage. Behind her, the remains of the plywood stage bobbed like driftwood. Floating among it, half a birthday cake, several chairs, and a lone, deflated flamingo. And me? I stood there, watching the disaster unfold, sipping my iced tea, and smiling. Because this wasn't just about revenge. This was about reminding everyone that sometimes the best way to win is to let the waves do the talking. Part 3. By sunrise. My backyard looked like a battlefield. Streamers floated in the pool like jellyfish. A soaked speaker lay tangled with extension cords, still sparking faintly whenever the breeze kicked up. And in the shallow end, someone's sequin jacket, fused to a busted strobe light. I stepped outside barefoot, coffee in hand, surveying the wreckage like a general after a victorious siege. And then I spotted her, Karen, standing at the gate, clipboard replaced by something worse, an HOA committee, and a local teen news blog reporter armed with a camera. Beside her stood Dennis, the HOA president, a man whose crowning achievement had been best lawn 3 years running. He clutched a manila envelope like it was a nuclear launch code. Karen's face, a war zone of rage, exhaustion, and pure desperation. She didn't even wait for pleasantries. "We need to talk," she barked. This has gone too far." I took a long, leisurely sip of my coffee. "Agreed," I said smoothly. "You trashed my property. Let's start there." Dennis cleared his throat, dramatically like he was preparing for Broadway. He handed me the envelope with shaking hands. Inside, some absurd, cobbled-together HOA document accusing me of, get this, intentional disruption of a community event and endangering guests. I actually laughed, out loud. "Endangering guests?" I echoed, waving a hand at my ruined backyard. "You built a nightclub on water, without permission, with trespassing contractors, then set it on fire. Karen's mouth snapped shut like a mousetrap. Before she could even sputter, Ted popped up behind the fence, grinning wide, and shouted, "Want to see the drone footage?" He waved a tablet like it was the Ark of the Covenant. Karen's face turned a deep, ugly shade of purple. She pivoted, her voice dripping fake concern. "We just think maybe it would be better for everyone if you took responsibility. You know, just cover some minor damages, the dance floor, DJ booth, the floral arch. That's all." I nearly dropped my coffee from laughing. "Let me get this straight," I said, barely containing myself. "You illegally threw a party, wrecked my pool, fried my backyard, and now you want me to pay for your flower arch?" Karen blinked rapidly, clearly not prepared for resistance. Dennis mumbled weakly, "We just want to avoid escalation. Neighborly peace." I smiled, the slow, terrifying kind. "Perfect," I said. "Then you're going to love what comes next." 2 hours later, Karen got her first surprise of the day. A uniformed officer showed up, clipboard in hand, to take official photos. Because, guess what? I had filed a police report, complete with videos of Karen trespassing, hiring unauthorized contractors, building without permits, and holding an illegal gathering of over 100 guests. Vandalism, trespassing, code violations. I hadn't even needed to press charges yet. Just the report alone was enough to put Karen officially on the radar. She stood there on the sidewalk, pale as a ghost, unable to argue with the officer, calmly snapping photos of every soaked, sagging disaster in my yard. And then came the second surprise. I uploaded everything: Ted's footage, the drone videos, even the slow-mo collapse clips, to a little corner of the internet called r/HO Nightmares. Within 6 hours, it hit the front page. By nightfall, over 1 million views. Comments rolled in like a tidal wave. "This is why I have fake landmines on my lawn. She built her own Atlantis, and then drowned. 10 out of 10 would invite to my next HOA meeting." Someone even made a slow-motion remix of Karen falling into the pool, set to Celine Dion's "My Heart Will Go On." Ted immediately set it as his ringtone. Karen's reputation obliterated. She wasn't just the HOA vice president anymore. She was an international meme. Neighborhood kids started calling her Splash Queen, a teenager down the block dressed as her for Halloween, complete with a soggy wig and a fake clipboard. Karen tried to threaten legal action against Ted, tried to file complaints against me for cyber harassment, but every time she tried, the new HOA lawyer, hired after the last one mysteriously resigned, laughed so hard he had to mute himself during the Zoom calls. And then, the third surprise landed. My cousin, the lawyer, sent her a cease and desist letter, demanding restitution for property damage, trespassing, emotional distress. Not because I wanted money. No. Because I wanted her to know this wasn't over. Not even close. The letter was hand-delivered to Karen during her weekly ladies' brunch on her porch. Ted filmed it, of course. The second she opened it, the mimosa glass slipped right out of her hand, shattering on the pavement. It was beautiful. And the best part? The HOA itself finally cracked. Neighbors who had been too scared to speak out started flooding the forums. Story after story emerged about Karen's tyranny, fining people for non-beige welcome mats, declaring wind chimes a sound violation, threatening to fine a 6-year-old for sidewalk chalk. A petition formed overnight demanding an audit of HOA funds, an emergency election, a full removal of Karen from any leadership position. It got 70 signatures in 48 hours. At the next meeting, the crowd was so large, they had to move it to the local high school auditorium. And for the first time ever, when Karen stood at the podium, clipboardless, makeup cracked, voice shaking, nobody was scared. Nobody stayed quiet. And when someone from the back shouted, "Hey, Karen, want to dance on the pool again?" the entire room erupted in laughter. Part 4. The moment the laughter faded inside the auditorium, Karen tried to regain her footing. She straightened her shoulders, clutched the microphone, and forced a brittle smile. "Let's not let one misunderstanding define our community," she said. But it was too late. Every eye in that room, every neighbor who had suffered under her clipboard reign, was wide awake now. The questions started flying like popcorn. "Karen, where did the money go from last year's HOA fundraiser? Karen, why did you fine my daughter for sidewalk chalk but waive your own violations? Karen, is it true you used HOA funds for party decorations at your daughter's Sweet 16? Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. The auditorium buzzed with low murmurs, some angry, some mocking. Karen stammered, "Those were authorized expenses, community building, events." Someone near the front row muttered, "Yeah, building a stage on someone else's pool really brought us together." A wave of giggles rippled through the crowd. Karen's face flushed a furious red. When the formal vote was called to remove her from the board, the ballots came in like an avalanche. The final tally wasn't even close. Karen was ousted, officially, publicly. Her reign was over. She sat there, frozen, clutching her papers like a life raft. Ted leaned over to me and whispered, "Think we should send her a farewell cake?" I chuckled into my drink. But Karen wasn't the type to go quietly. The next morning, a brand new "for sale" sign appeared crookedly in her front yard. The wind twisted it like it didn't even want to stand there. Neighbors passed by, pretending not to stare. But everyone felt it. The tension in the air had snapped, like a brittle old wire finally giving way. People smiled more. Dogs barked without getting cited for disturbing the peace. Kids rode their bikes without fear of fines for unapproved helmet stickers. The whole street breathed again. But Karen wasn't done causing drama. No. She posted one last bitter rant on the community message board, accusing us all of bullying, mob rule, and destroying the neighborhood's moral standards. It would have been laughable if it wasn't so perfectly, pathetically Karen. By noon, someone had memified her message, overlaying it on a picture of her slipping into the pool with the caption, "Moral standards?" More like moist standards. I nearly snorted my lemonade across the room. The real kicker, her insurance claim. You see, Karen had tried to file a claim to recover the damages from her ruined event, the floral arch, the DJ booth, even her designer sunglasses that floated off during the chaos. The insurance company denied it, flat out. Reason cited: unauthorized use of private property without owner consent. They even included drone footage of the one Ted filmed, showing Karen strutting across my pool-turned dance floor like she owned it. Word got around fast. By dinner, the entire neighborhood was buzzing. Karen owed over $27,000 in damages, out of pocket. No reimbursement, no help from the HOA, nothing. I should have felt bad. Maybe a tiny part of me did. But then I remembered the endless fines, the smug notes taped to doors, the fear she'd spread for years, and suddenly I didn't feel bad at all. Not one bit. On her last day, as the moving truck rumbled away, Karen stood alone in her driveway. No neighbors came to wave, no kids ran up to say goodbye. She loaded the last box herself, then climbed into her car, sunglasses hiding whatever emotions flickered behind them. And then she was gone. Just like that. The clipboard queen had fallen. That night, the neighborhood gathered, spontaneously. No official invites, no HOA approval, just people dragging out grills, folding chairs, coolers of lemonade and soda. Ted set up his projector against my garage wall and played the now infamous video of Karen slipping into the pool, on a loop, set to dramatic opera music. Children laughed until they fell over. Adults wiped tears from their eyes. The air smelled of barbecue and victory. I stood there, handing out duck-shaped cookies a neighbor had baked, and I realized something important. This wasn't just a party. It was a celebration of something bigger, something real, freedom, community, joy, the things Karen had tried so hard to control, but never truly understood. And standing there, watching the laughter ripple through the crowd, I smiled and whispered to myself, this was worth every single wave. Part 5. The weeks after Karen's departure felt like waking up from a long, strange dream. At first, no one knew quite what to do. People walked their dogs a little slower. Neighbors lingered at mailboxes, sharing cautious smiles, testing the new air of freedom. No clipboard lurking behind the bushes. No sudden fines for unauthorized wind chimes or overly whimsical garden gnomes. It was as if the entire neighborhood had exhaled, a collective sigh of relief that echoed down every street. One afternoon, Ted stopped by my house, a mischievous gleam in his eye. "You know what we should do?" he said, grinning. "Throw a real party. No clipboards, no HOA permission slips, just fun." I laughed so hard I almost dropped my drink. It was perfect. A celebration. A true reclaiming. We started planning that night. No formal invites, no flyers, just word of mouth, and a promise. Come as you are, bring food, bring floats, bring your loudest laughter. The response? Overwhelming. Families that barely spoke beyond polite nods at the mailbox suddenly wanted to contribute. Someone offered a cotton candy machine. Another neighbor donated a bounce house, shaped like a giant rubber duck. Ted borrowed a massive speaker system, because as he put it, if we're making waves, they better hear them 2 streets over. The night of the party, the entire block lit up. Lanterns strung between houses. Smoky smells of barbecue curling into the warm summer air. Kids running barefoot, waving glow sticks like sparklers. The old community clubhouse, once a monument to Karen's micromanagement, stood dark and empty across the street. Nobody missed it, not even a little. My backyard became the epicenter. The newly resurfaced pool sparkled under the lights. The wave machine, primed and ready. The ducks, inflatable ones this time, bobbed cheerfully along the edges. At sunset, Ted stood on a lawn chair, raised a plastic cup, and shouted, "To freedom! To the fall of the clipboard queen! And to the man who gave us waves!" Everyone roared. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like just a guy with a pool. I felt like part of something bigger, a neighborhood reborn. The playlist was pure chaos. Old rock anthems, pop hits, even a few ridiculous polka songs someone snuck in. Kids launched themselves off the diving board. Adults lounged with drinks in hand. The ducks floated serenely past inflatable pizza slices and unicorns. It was loud. It was messy. It was beautiful. At one point, someone, probably Ted, hooked up a projector and started playing the Best of Karen compilation. Footage of her slipping into the pool, her outraged speeches at HOA meetings, all set to a symphony of quacking sound effects. The crowd lost it. Neighbors doubled over with laughter, some wiping away tears, others gasping for air. Even the new family who had just moved into Karen's old house came by, curious. When they saw the video montage, the husband turned to me and said, laughing, "So, is this like mandatory viewing for new residents?" I grinned. "Only if you want to survive." As the night deepened and the stars blinked into the sky, I slipped away for a moment, stood at the edge of the pool, watching the shimmering reflections ripple across the water. It hit me then. What we had really won, not just a battle against one entitled neighbor, but something bigger, the right to enjoy our lives, to build memories, to laugh loudly without fear of a clipboard swinging by. I pulled out my phone, opened the Wave Machine app, hovered my thumb over the settings. Just one gentle ripple. Enough to make the floating ducks dance in the moonlight. I tapped the screen. The water stirred, a soft, joyous movement like a heartbeat echoing across the night. I smiled. Somewhere out there, Karen was probably furiously drafting an imaginary citation. But here, right now, we were free. And nothing, not even the ghost of a clipboard, could take that away. Part 6. The days after the celebration felt like a dream. For the first time in years, the street wasn't weighed down by fear. It buzzed with something else entirely. Hope, freedom, joy. Neighbors stopped pretending. Kids raced bikes without getting passive-aggressive notes on their door. Families planted colorful flowers without worrying about aesthetic violations. It was beautiful. A few afternoons later, I was lounging by my pool, iced tea in hand, ducks floating lazily, when Ted popped his head over the fence. "You busy, king of the pool?" he teased. I chuckled. "Depends. What's the mission?" He grinned. That devilish grin that meant trouble was brewing. "Karen," he said, "is back." I nearly dropped my glass. "Back?" I repeated. "Like, here?" Ted nodded, barely containing his excitement. "She's snooping around the old HOA clubhouse," he whispered. "Clipboard, sunglasses, the full costume." I sighed. Of course, some things never change. Curiosity got the better of me. I wandered down the block, blending with the afternoon crowd. Sure enough, there she was. Karen, in all her faded glory, pacing the cracked sidewalk in front of the abandoned HOA building. Clipboard clutched in a white-knuckled grip, phone glued to her ear, muttering furiously. It was almost sad. Almost. I caught snippets as I passed by. Words like reform, new leadership, and community order. Ted, ever the shadow, filmed discreetly from behind a bush. He was getting very good at that. Karen suddenly turned, caught a glimpse of me, and froze. For a long second, neither of us spoke. Just two people standing in the wreckage of a battle neither could undo. Then, without a word, she spun on her heel, marched to her car, and peeled out of the parking lot like she was fleeing a crime scene. That night, the neighborhood group chat exploded. Ted posted a blurry, zoomed-in picture of Karen storming off, captioned, "Karen, the sequel nobody asked for." Memes flooded in within minutes. Return of the Quack. Clipboard 2. The Reckoning. Fast and furiously petty. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. But deep down, I knew something. Karen wasn't done. People like her didn't just disappear. They regrouped. They plotted. And somewhere in that furious brain of hers, I knew she was cooking up a plan. A last-ditch attempt to claw back whatever shred of power she thought she had left. The next morning, a manila envelope appeared at my door. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Ted was already there, phone out, narrating like a true crime podcaster. Day 112. Subject has received suspicious package, possibly bomb, possibly glitter. I laughed and tore it open. Inside, a single sheet of paper, typed in Comic Sans, no less. Notice of intent to form a new HOA, followed by a list of absurd proposed rules. No inflatable ducks larger than 18 inches. No gatherings of more than 6 people without pre-approval. No pool parties without a certified lifeguard present. At the bottom, Karen's signature, and a crude doodle of what I can only assume was supposed to be a smiling sun, but looked more like a shrieking grapefruit. I blinked. Ted howled with laughter, and in that moment, I knew exactly what had to be done. Not anger, not lawsuits, not even waves. Something much better. Something Karen would never understand. I smiled at Ted. "Get the ducks ready," I said. "We're throwing a block party." Part 7. We didn't waste a second. By noon that Saturday, Ted had printed out flyers that said, "Block Party, Celebrate Freedom," featuring ducks, music, and zero Karen. We taped them on mailboxes, posted them in the group chat, even slipped one under Karen's windshield wiper, a tiny act of rebellion that made us giggle like teenagers. The vibe was electric. Neighbors dragged grills into driveways. Someone set up a cotton candy machine. Kids drew chalk murals all over the sidewalks. Giant ducks, wave machines, and memes about clipboards. Even Bill, the former HOA president, rolled up with a cooler full of lemonade and an old boombox. "Time to party like it's 1989, he said, grinning. Meanwhile, Karen lurked. She paced up and down her porch, binoculars in hand, watching the preparations like a general surveying enemy lines. At one point, she even tried yelling from her doorstep, "This gathering is illegal!" No one listened. Someone cranked the music louder. Another neighbor tossed her a rubber duck and shouted, "Lighten up, Karen!" The duck landed at her feet. She kicked it like it had personally insulted her mother. By 4 p.m., the block was packed. Families grilled burgers, teens tossed footballs. A group of little kids paraded down the sidewalk holding homemade signs that read, "What'll you do without joy? Make waves, not rules." It was magic. Real community. The kind you can't fake with clipped lawns and beige mailboxes. And then, because fate has a wicked sense of humor, Ted grabbed the mic. He cleared his throat dramatically, tapped the speaker twice, and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, today we honor the reason we're all here. The hero, the legend, the mighty, Sir Honnet. The ducks, freshly shampooed and wearing tiny bow ties, waddled onto a mini red carpet Ted had laid out across my lawn. The crowd erupted in cheers. Someone threw confetti. Another played a trumpet flourish off-key. It was ridiculous. It was perfect. From her porch, Karen looked like she might actually explode. Face red, hands shaking, phone clutched like a lifeline. She called someone, probably the police. We all knew it. But this time, no one cared. We weren't breaking any laws. No permits required for private property fun. Just a neighborhood, taking back its joy. And just when I thought it couldn't get better, Ted wheeled out the final surprise. A giant inflatable wave, 30 feet wide, with a cartoon Karen riding it backward, screaming. Across the bottom in bold letters, "Ride the wave of freedom." The whole block howled with laughter. Karen stormed inside and slammed the door so hard a neighbor's wind chime shattered. That night, under the glow of string lights with music playing and kids splashing in the pool, I realized something. We hadn't just thrown a party. We'd thrown off a dictatorship, one clipboard at a time. And as Sir Hunnet gave a proud honk under the stars, I raised my glass and toasted quietly to myself. Here's to waves, and the people brave enough to ride them. Part 8. By Sunday morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Photos from the block party had exploded across local Facebook groups. Videos of Sir Honnet's grand entrance, the inflatable freedom wave, and Karen's furious retreat. They were everywhere. Someone even started a meme page. Karen versus the Ducks, a tragic saga. The page gained 800 followers overnight. But Karen wasn't done yet. At exactly 9 a.m., she made her move. I was sipping my coffee by the pool when I heard it, a knock sharp enough to rattle my front door. I opened it to find Karen, clipboard in hand. Sunglasses perched on her forehead, lipstick smudged in a way that screamed emotional crisis. Behind her stood Dennis from the HOA, and a man in a too-tight polo shirt carrying a cheap briefcase. Probably a lawyer, or at least someone pretending to be one. "Mr. Jones?" Karen began, her voice dripping fake sweetness. "We need to discuss last night's unauthorized activities." I smiled. "Sure, shall we sit by the pool? Maybe ride the wave machine while we talk?" Dennis coughed awkwardly. Karen's eye twitched. The polo shirt man spoke up. "My client," he meant Karen, "is prepared to offer you a settlement, provided you agree to cease all slanderous activity and issue a formal apology." I nearly choked on my coffee. "An apology?" I repeated, stunned. "For hosting a barbecue? For inciting community unrest?" Karen snapped. I stared at her for a long moment. Then, very slowly, I pulled out my phone. On screen, the HOA Rules, highlighted. Section 8, Paragraph 3. Private gatherings on private property were fully legal. No permits required, no restrictions on inflatable ducks either. I turned the screen toward her. Karen's face blanched. "I think we're done here," I said, voice low. "And if you're planning on suing me, you might want to explain to a judge why you covered my pool without permission and hosted an unlicensed event on private land." Dennis was already backing away, muttering something about checking the bylaws. Karen's jaw worked furiously, like she was trying to chew invisible nails. Without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed off, the fake lawyer scrambling after her. Later that afternoon, Ted texted me 3 words. "You'll want to see this." Attached was a screenshot Karen had posted publicly on the neighborhood forum. Due to personal reasons, I am stepping down from my HOA duties immediately. I wish the community all the best. Below the post, comments piled up faster than fireworks on the 4th of July. Thank you, universe. Best thing to happen since unlimited breadsticks. Can we build a shrine to Sir Hanat now? It was glorious. That evening, the whole street threw an impromptu celebration. No official invites, no fancy flyers, just neighbors dragging out lawn chairs and fire pits. Kids zipped down the sidewalks on scooters. Parents sipped wine coolers and shared guilty giggles. Someone even baked a cake shaped like a clipboard, with "retired" scrawled across it in blue frosting. As I leaned back in my chair, feet kicked up, drink in hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not just the absence of noise, but real, golden, soul-deep peace. The kind that comes when you finally take your backyard back. I glanced over at Sir Hanat, floating lazily in the pool, crowned with a tiny flower wreath someone had made for him. He gave a single proud honk, as if to say, "We did it!" And under the stars, with laughter in the air and freedom in the breeze, I whispered back, "Yeah, buddy, we really did." Part 9. The weeks that followed felt like living in a brand new world. Without Karen's clipboard tyranny hovering over everything, the neighborhood bloomed. Lawns got a little wilder, gardens a little brighter. Kids left chalk drawings on the sidewalks, ducks mostly, sometimes a cartoon Karen being chased by inflatable floaties, and no one told them to stop. One afternoon, Ted and I were fixing a loose fence post when a group of kids rolled by on bikes. Each of them had duct-taped a rubber duck to their handlebars. One kid, barely 6 years old, shouted, "Long live the Quack King!" I nearly dropped the hammer laughing. There were ripple effects, too. Neighbors who'd never spoken before started trading baked goods and lawn tools. Someone started a community garden club. No HOA approval needed. Another neighbor hosted a garage sale where the hottest item was a T-shirt reading, "Karen danced, we laughed." They sold out in an hour. But the best part? The pool. My beautiful battle-scarred pool. It became a gathering spot for everyone. Birthday parties, weekend barbecues, lazy Sunday floats with coffee in one hand and donut in the other. No drama, no permits, just people living. One night, about a month after the incident, I sat on my back porch, iced tea sweating in my hand, watching the last light slip behind the rooftops. The pool lights shimmered. Sir Hanat floated peacefully, his little feathered body drifting through the reflections. Ted wandered over with 2 beers and a giant grin. "You know," he said, dropping into a chair beside me, "this all started with a clipboard and a bad idea." I laughed. "Best bad idea ever." We clinked bottles, the sound crisp and sharp against the warm, soft night. Then Ted said something that stuck with me. "You didn't just fight back, man. You reminded everybody what this place could be." I looked around, at the lights strung between houses, at the distant hum of laughter, at a community that had rediscovered itself, and I knew he was right. And this wasn't about ducks anymore. It wasn't even about Karen. It was about freedom, about joy, about reclaiming the little corner of the world we called home. And all it took was a wave machine, a stubborn refusal to back down, and a neighborhood full of people ready to choose laughter over fear. That night, as the stars blanketed the sky, I tapped my phone, fired up Wave Mode 1, and watched tiny ripples dance across the pool. Sir Honnet gave a happy honk, and somewhere deep inside, I felt the last pieces of the old fear break apart and drift away. The HOA could have their rules, their regulations, their bylaws, but out here, by this pool, in this backyard, joy ruled, and no clipboard in the world could ever stop it again. Part 10. The summer rolled on, and so did the laughter. The neighborhood, once stiff and rule-bound, had transformed into something real, something beautiful. We had barbecues that spilled into each other's yards, impromptu games of street soccer with jump ropes for goals, and evening gatherings by the pool where stories flowed like lemonade. No permits, no permissions, just people, finally breathing easy again. One Saturday, as the sun dipped low, the new HOA board hosted a community celebration. No speeches, no dress codes, just a potluck, a few fold-out tables, and an open invitation. I set up the pool area, stringing lights from the trees, laying out floaties and extra towels. Ted, naturally, manned the grill, flipping burgers with the confidence of a man who had once brought down a regime with memes. Around dusk, someone cranked up a speaker. The music floated through the warm air. Kids shrieked and dove into the pool. Neighbors lounged in chairs, swapping jokes and passing plates of food. It was chaotic, messy, perfect. At one point, Cheryl, the sweet older lady who once lived in fear of Karen's beige mat rules, raised a toast. "To freedom!" she shouted, holding up her lemonade. The whole yard erupted in cheers. Someone added, laughing, "And to ducks, Sir Honnet," who had been floating majestically nearby on a pizza-shaped raft, gave a perfectly timed honk. The entire crowd cracked up. As the night deepened, and fairy lights blinked against the dark, I wandered to the edge of the pool. The water was still again. Peaceful. I thought about everything that had happened, about how close we'd come to letting one person's pettiness steal our joy, and how, somehow, a wave machine, a lot of stubbornness, and a community ready to remember how to laugh had changed everything. I pulled out my phone, opened the app, hovered over the button labeled Wave Mode 3, Karen's Dance Party. I smiled and tapped it, just once. The water rippled gently, tiny waves shimmering under the lights. Kids squealed and jumped higher, parents laughed, and somewhere across the lawn Ted yelled, "Long live the Pool King!" I stood there for a moment, letting it all wash over me. The sounds, the lights, the pure, ridiculous joy of it all. This was home now, not a battlefield of fines and clipboard tyranny, but a messy, noisy, wonderful community. And as the waves lapped softly at the sides of the pool, I knew deep down that no matter what storms might come, we'd weather them together. Because once you learn how to dance on the waves, you never forget. Not ever.